Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth. Not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast. Hosted by Seth Andrews.
I need to talk this one out today. Is that okay? I mean, if I just sort of go off for a little while and express to you some of the things that are bouncing around inside my skull, maybe they'll resonate with you. Maybe you've seen this sort of white noise going on out there about cancel culture. And maybe you've had your own concerns and questions. Maybe you're still finding your way. I feel that way sometimes. Already in the comments section, I'm sure there are people who are hammering out their angry opinion. Cancel culture is absolutely real. This is a totalitarian state that wants to snuff out all dissenting voices, right? And then there's someone who disagrees with them and says cancel culture is a total myth. This is just accountability. We've been hearing about cancel culture for a while. Perhaps the most recent famous story has to do with Gina Carano. She is an American actress. She's a fitness model. She actually was a mixed martial arts fighter, and she was a badass. I mean, I think she had one loss when she was kickboxing for Elite XC and Strike Force, which are awesome names for an organization, by the way. Strike Force, MMA. Anyway, she lost once, and it was right after that loss she retired. She was featured as a hero character in the video game Command & Conquer Red Alert 3. She'd done some TV and video. She starred in a Steven Soderbergh film back in 2011. Now, this is the guy, he's been around for decades, but he was the guy behind Sex, Lies, and Videotape and Ocean's 11 and Ocean's 12, etc. He directed a film that starred Gina Carano back in 2011 called Haywire. She's been in Fast and Furious. She was in Extraction, Deadpool. In 2008, Yahoo ranked her as one of the top 10 influential women of the year. She made Maxim's Hot 100 the year after that, and she was on the cover of ESPN magazine's Body issue. What is the body issue? Like, is it just people with good bodies in there? Like, what's the body issue? Anyway, and of course, she was a fan favorite on The Mandalorian, Gina Carano. She was on The Mandalorian. She is not anymore. She has been dropped by Lucasfilm, dropped by Disney, dropped by her talent agency. And here's what happened in a nutshell. Gina Carano started taking some heat last year. Some people online were asking if she would come out in support of BLM, the Black Lives Matter movement, and she resisted. And then she felt like they were sort of ganging up on her, and she started liking posts that were critical of Black Lives Matter. Then came the protest and the riots after the murder of George Floyd. And she liked a satire article that was published by the Babylon Bee, and it showed a burning city block, and the fire was shaped in the words LOVE for love. So she liked that post. She was accused of marginalizing the transgender community because she put parody pronouns in the bio section of her Twitter account. She said it wasn't supposed to be transphobic, but she was just pushing back against these online mobs. She said, they're bullying me. Shortly after that blow up, she said she had a conversation with the star of The Mandalorian, Pedro Pascal. Now, Pascal has a sister who is trans. And so he and Gina Carano actually had like a private conversation. And Gina Carano softened her position and said, he helped me to understand why people were putting pronouns in their bios. And then she posted this. She said, I won't be putting them in my bio. but good for all you who choose to. I stand against bullying, especially the most vulnerable, and the freedom to choose. Now we skip forward to the November presidential election, and Gina Carano had jumped on the train about the rigged election and voter fraud, totally baseless claims that were made by Donald Trump and echoed by Gina Carano. She was critical of and actually mocked mask mandates during a pandemic. She tweeted November 14th, breaking news. Democratic government leaders now recommend we all wear blindfolds along with masks so we can't see what's really going on. She didn't really seem at all to take COVID seriously. She grew more and more impatient with what she felt was cancel culture, and so she started pushing back, right? I mean, she's a fighter. She starts pushing back. November 14th, she posted on Twitter a clip from a black and white movie. I didn't recognize the film, but the clip has the dialogue that says, "Look at me. Fuck these people. Fuck 'em." Now we skip to 2021. Gina Carano posted this on Twitter, and the tweet's been deleted since, but it was her commentary on the political climate right here in the United States, where she compared us to Nazi Germany. And more importantly, I think she compared American conservatives to the Jews who were persecuted by the Nazis. She said, because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? And then on that post, she had a famous image from the 1941 massacres of Jews that happened in eastern Poland and western Ukraine. Thousands of people murdered by their own neighbors. Now, Gina Carano comparing today's American political climate to the persecution of Jews in Nazi Germany. And this was the final straw. In the wake of huge public outrage, Disney and Lucasfilm and her own talent agency gave her the boot. Now, the next day, Gina Carano remained defiant, and she announced that she had teamed up with The Daily Wire to produce her own movie. She said, "The Daily Wire is helping make one of my dreams, to develop and produce my own film, come true. I cried out and my prayer was answered. I'm sending out a direct message of hope to everyone living in fear of cancellation by the totalitarian mob. I have only just begun using my voice, which is now freer than ever before, and I hope it inspires others to do the same. They can't cancel us if we don't let them." So let's park here for just a second, okay? The Daily Wire, this is who she's teaming up with. The Daily Wire was founded back in 2015 by Ben Shapiro, okay? Ben Shapiro, a somehow famous conservative political commentator. He was a 2020 Trump voter. He called himself a sometimes Trumper. Ben Shapiro supports a total abortion ban. Only one exception to that, the life of the mother in danger. Beyond all that, a total ban on abortion. He opposes all gay marriage and has said that the United States doesn't discriminate against homosexuals. All right, so that's some irony. He's saying we shouldn't allow them to get married. By the way, they face no discrimination in this country. Ben Shapiro thinks that trans people are mentally ill, has said that Western civilization is superior to other civilizations. We'll give that news to every other nation on the planet. Congratulations. We have deemed you inferior, or Ben Shapiro has deemed you inferior. He mocked the critical and cultural acclaim of the Black Panther movie. He said, well, Black Panther was really only embraced and successful and groundbreaking because we're overcompensating. The lefties have overcompensated over the lie of systemic racism. He doesn't believe that there's any systemic racism in this country. He once told Joe Rogan that Colin Kaepernick's kneeling at the national anthem wasn't just a peaceful act of protest to draw attention to racial discrimination and injustice, but was, in fact, a fuck you to the whole country. Of course, my personal favorite is the Ben Shapiro clip where he downplayed global climate change. Essentially, he was saying, all right, fine. Let's say the ice caps are melting and the glaciers are all melting because of a median increase in world temperatures. Well, fine. If the oceans rise and the shorelines change, the people who are living on those shorelines can simply put their houses up for sale. Now, I could just play you the audio clip, but I would rather play you another clip. It's a clip of Shapiro with commentary by a TV host named Owen Jones. And Owen Jones added some music to it and his own commentary at the end. He crashes through the screen with an axe for a final word. You can't see him, but here's the audio of that clip.
Here he is dipping his webbed flippers into the pool of climate change with his signature Shapiro intellect.
So let's say, for the sake of argument, that all of the water levels around the world rise by let's say 5 feet over the next 100 years, say 10 feet by the next 100 years, and it puts all the low-lying areas on the coast underwater, right? Which, let's say all of that happens. You think that people aren't going to just sell their homes and move?
Just one small problem. Sell their houses to who, Ben? Fucking Aquaman!
Okay, so Ben Shapiro, all right, he's just an awful person. He is now the guy who has locked arms with Gina Carano. He is the answer to her prayer in her words. And cultural opinion is totally split. She's a conspiracy-headed bigot and hate-monger who should be cast out of society and canceled everywhere she goes. Or she is a First Amendment hero being persecuted for speaking her mind. You see the problem? Now, I'm not defending Gina Carano or saying that she shouldn't have been let go. When I say here, when we're addressing the bigger picture, there is a phenomenon of outrage culture. Maybe for some people, it becomes an amplification of natural, even healthy frustrations. You know, they're upset. They feel helpless against the system. They just want to vent. And so they go online and just let it all out. And then that ends up in some kind of feedback loop of rage that becomes unproductive. Maybe they're just hotheads. You know, some people, I think, are recreational outragers. This is sport. Like the tarring and feathering of their fellow human beings is their pastime, is what they enjoy. There are some people out there who just live on the oxygen of outrage. And again, relax. I'm not saying that outrage is not the appropriate response to the outrageous. I'm not saying that. We should be angry at the injustice of the world. We should be outraged at the awful people doing awful things. I mean, every time I see Pastor Greg Locke or Ted Cruz or Ben Shapiro or any of those people, justifiably angry, and I have responded in many ways angrily about that. But how many times have we seen the two-dimensional avatar, the other, perhaps the perfect stranger, and we treat them differently in the virtual world? We are less accommodating, less kind in the virtual world than we might be if they were sitting in a chair right across from us. Our immediate response is to go into the red zone, because it's never been easier to mash into a keyboard and call somebody out and gang up and mob and try to win. I mean, how often has the internet not really been about discourse? Twitter's not about discourse. So often Twitter seems to be about just winning. And it's not a cheat to say that recreational outrage or misplaced outrage is rampant on the internet, because we've all seen it. So I'm a tennis fan. I'm watching the Australian Open women's final, and Naomi Osaka defeats Jennifer Brady in straight sets to win the Open. Big deal. This number one female tennis player in the world, and she just kicked ass. And so they're at the awards ceremony right after the match, and during the acceptance speech, she turns to Jennifer Brady and she says, "Do you like to be called Jennifer or Jenny?" And Brady says, "I prefer Jenny." And Osaka immediately said, "Firstly, I want to congratulate Jennifer." Okay, it was just a mistake. I mean, she's on the global stage. The adrenaline's through the roof. She's distracted. Maybe she's a little nervous. She just won the Open, for Pete's sake. And Naomi Osaka misspeaks and calls her Jennifer instead of Jenny. There's some chuckling in the crowd. It's nothing. This is a nothing story. I mean, as soon as it was brought to Osaka's attention, she went on Twitter and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that." So why are people calling out Osaka on Twitter for trolling Jennifer Brady, for being dismissive of what her name was? There's articles online about this. Sports Illustrated, Yahoo Sports, ESPN, Deadline. I mean, this is news? She just misspoke. It was just a human thing. I'm amazed at how people immediately project ill intent and malice onto someone like Osaka, who's just operating in goodwill, who just made an innocuous mistake. It was nothing. This is nothing. I'll bet Jennifer Brady didn't give a shit. I mean, no one's calling for her cancellation, but this does represent this ridiculous, misplaced, even recreational outrage that I've been talking about. And I'm sure the news sites are probably doing the controversy for clicks thing, right? And if there's not a real controversy, let's manufacture one, as long as people are reading the story and talking about it. Maybe by bringing it up, I'm part of the problem, but I think the problem already existed. Right, they already published this on their homepages, and it's already being talked about. So I'm coming in after the fact to address it as an example. Okay, in my defense, everybody just needs to shut up and congratulate these two stellar athletes on one hell of an accomplishment, first and second place at the Australian. With all the outrageous things going on in the world, and this is the kind of thing we trip over. This, of course, isn't an example of cancel culture, which I really don't think. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I just don't think it's a thing. I do think there are instances where some people have overreacted and people have maybe lost a job or a position. I'm not saying those examples don't exist. I am saying that I don't think that it's the runaway, out of control, malignant cancer on society that everybody says it is. I think more often than not, we're talking about consequences for words and behaviors, okay? But call-out culture, I mean, that's a thing. When I log on to Twitter, everybody's calling everybody else out. I'm calling you out. Oh, yeah? Well, I'm going to call out your call-out. Oh, yeah? Well, I'm going to screenshot your call-out with photoshopped commentary. Oh, yeah? I'm going to take your face and make it into an unflattering meme. Oh, yeah? I'm going to blog about your meme. Oh, yeah? I'm going to do a video on YouTube about the blog, about the meme, about the tweet. I've gotten to the point where I can't even watch. I'm not saying that I haven't ever shared awfulness with the rest of the world to draw attention or to publicly resist it. I'm saying that if all people do is point and keyboard mash and meme each other all day, every day, how pathetic is your life? There's got to be more to life, right? Call out culture, yeah, I buy that. Cancel culture? I am not convinced that this isn't usually just cause and effect. What's another example? You know, Trump, I did a video about this a while back. Right after the insurrection, Twitter dumps him, right, because he's in violation of their terms of service. I would think inciting insurrection would qualify as a violation. I mean, after years of deceit and awfulness and conspiracy and hate and whatever, Facebook drops him. We find that the hosting platforms are dropping Parler, which has become a haven for alt-right groups and conspiracy nuts and Saudi nationalists, etc. A bunch of people were screaming that Trump was a victim of cancel culture, right? It wasn't a cause and effect thing where he was just being awful and inciting violence and spreading damaging misinformation during a global pandemic and a national election. No, he was a victim in a culture that denied him a voice. Now, at the same time that people are screaming that he is a victim of cancel culture, the White House press room remains completely empty. You know what I'm saying? All he had to do was go stand behind the podium to have instant access to the entire world. He could have offered an interview to almost any media outlet on the planet and been given global exposure. He was the president of the United States with the biggest bullhorn anywhere, and yet somehow he is a victim of cancel culture. You can see how people use it as a shield for awfulness, right? Jimmy Fallon hosted The Tonight Show. It came to light that 20 years ago, when he was on Saturday Night Live, he did an impersonation of Chris Rock while in blackface. And people revealed that he had done this. Some people called for his cancellation. There was a hashtag Jimmy Fallon is over party that was trending on Twitter. Jimmy Fallon came forward with a public apology. He said, "I'm very sorry for making this unquestionably offensive decision, and thank all of you for holding me accountable." That died down after he came forward with the apology. Now, I find that very telling, right? He didn't double down, but he said, "Oh, shit, I screwed up, and I'm sorry, and I appreciate you holding me accountable." That's refreshing language. Of course, Jimmy Fallon, not canceled. He remains a terrific host of The Tonight Show. I'm reminded of Roseanne Barr, right? They just brought back the Roseanne Show. And back in 2018, she posted a racist tweet about Valerie Jarrett, who's an African-American woman, a senior advisor to Barack Obama when he was president. She said that Valerie Jarrett was the product of the Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes. Roseanne was dropped from her own show for just straight-up racism and awfulness. I'm trying to think of another example. J.K. Rowling comes to mind. She went on the internet and said some things that were considered transphobic. She was talking about biological sex and gender, and I don't know, she was just dismissive, or seemed very dismissive of the trans community, and she got a ton of pushback on that and doubled down. Right? So instead of operating with sensitivity toward this hugely marginalized group, she doubled down, she reinforced, she just kind of made it worse. A lot of people said they were done with J.K. Rowling and her work. Some people had called for her to be let go by her publisher, and the publisher said, "No, we're not going to do that. This is a free speech issue." That debacle was made even worse because of the pseudonym that she had chosen. Now, she said she had no idea there was a connection. She didn't choose the name Robert Galbraith for this reason, but that was the pseudonym that she had used for one of her new books. Robert Galbraith was a conversion therapist. This is a guy who used to believe you could convert gay people out of being gay. And so that added fuel to the fire. Holy shit, J.K. Rowling has adopted the name of a gay conversion therapist. And again, she came forward and said, "I had no idea this guy existed. I just picked the name." Some people give her the benefit of the doubt on that, and some people have not. In 2018, Rowling liked a tweet which called transgender women men in dresses. Her representative came out shortly after that and said it was an accident. It was a mistake. She didn't mean to like that post. The LGBT advocacy group GLAAD offered to have an off-the-record conversation with J.K. Rowling and said, "Hey, let's hook up and let's just talk off the record, because we'd kind of like to walk you through some of the more problematic views that you've got." Rowling declined that. She was publicly criticized by Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter himself. He did a blog for the Trevor Project, and he said this. He said, "Transgender women are women. Any statement to the contrary erases the identity and dignity of transgender people and goes against all advice given by professional healthcare associations who have far more expertise on this subject matter than either Joe or I." Then came J.K. Rowling's signature on this big editorial piece. Her name one of 150 authors and academics to put out a public statement that condemned cancel culture. That letter came out in Harper's Magazine. And that was fun because once the Harper's opinion piece came out and some of the signatories saw who else had signed the document, they flipped out and they said, "I don't want to be signed next to that person. Please pull my name." Other people pointed out the obvious. You got a bunch of entitled rich people with massive platforms who are bitching about the fact that they are being canceled. This makes no sense. You are being seen and heard by the entire planet from a position of power and privilege, and you are moaning about how you are being canceled. It's like watching every host on Fox News. They are whining by the minute every day about how they cannot be heard in this climate. Hashtag irony. What's your take on cancel culture? What do you think about all this? 678. Hi, who's this?
Hey, how's it going? This is Nick.
Nick, talk to me. What's your opinion?
Hey, so I just wanted to touch on a couple things really quick. So not so much from the perspective that people are employees, but it is definitely a function of capitalism, if you like it or not. The only reason people lose sponsorships or lose their job is from the political pressure from a bunch of fans basically being upset at a brand. So it's not so much some benevolent company decides, oh, we can't have a bigot working for us. It's more about how much PR credit can we get, if that makes sense.
So your position is that, I mean, who really knows intent? But I mean, it's very possible that Disney, Lucasfilm, et cetera, it was just a business decision.
Yeah, totally. I think it's the case in all of these sort of situations where people are very outraged that, you know, so-and-so lost their job because they said something like vaguely transphobic on Twitter or something like that. But, you know, it's kind of foolish to assume that, like, Clorox really cares, you know, what their representation is in terms of bigotry. It's more about, you know, what kind of PR credit can we get? How much of a financial hit are we going to take? There's nothing really, you know, moral in that sense about it. I guess I just get sort of annoyed with, like, not even just the lack of nuance, but people have a really hard time understanding that, you know, there's not like a literal organized, you know, mob of Twitter users inside of one building that's deciding who they're going to take down next. And I actually don't even think it's like a landmine thing either. It's more people hold views that may or may not be socially acceptable, and it just happens to come out one particular day. It's not like they just said, oh, whoops, I, you know, did a racism by accident. You know, my phone autocorrected, that sort of thing.
My friend, I sure appreciate you and your call, and be safe out there, okay?
Thank you. You too.
I'm interested in the phenomenon of the offense archaeologist digging through someone's past without necessarily taking into context whether or not that person has changed. An example of this, and I think this is a legitimate example of people calling for a kind of cancellation, but an example being the actor Liam Neeson. I wrote about him in the final chapter of my book, Confessions of a Former Fox News Christian. But, you know, Liam Neeson's out on the circuit a couple of years ago, and he was talking about how he had informed the vengeful feelings of his character in the movie Cold Pursuit. And he's doing this interview with The Independent. And unfortunately, tragically, he talked about how he had drawn on the vengeful emotions of like 30 years ago. He was this hot-headed, racist kid, really. In the violence of Northern Ireland, a dear friend of his had been raped by a black person, and he went out on the prowl looking for a black person to murder. Okay, it's a tremendously awful thing to admit, but he drew on that or remembered that to inform the character. But he's no longer that guy. In fact, he admitted he was ashamed of the person that he used to be. But that interview blew up in his face, people calling him a racist. Some people don't change. The fact that he would even think about this means he still has racist tendencies, you know, those types of things. Whoopi Goldberg comes forward to his defense and says, I know Liam Neeson. He is not a racist. I don't think he deserved to be canceled for what he thought and did 30 years ago. There were some people, they wanted Liam Neeson digitally removed from the Men in Black 4 movie. Now, what is that if not cancellation, right? And I think an unfair cancellation because he was talking about something that he did decades ago, someone that he was decades ago. I also wrote about Kevin Hart. Somebody had revealed 12 years ago that he had made homophobic tweets, and there was a homophobic portion of his stand-up routine. That came to light, and he was disinvited to host the Academy Awards. Now, does the Kevin Hart of 10, 12 years ago reflect the Kevin Hart of today? Does that qualify as cancel culture? And do we allow room for people like Kevin Hart to evolve? And I genuinely think he has. I think there was an article, an interview even earlier this year where he admitted his words, I fucked up. Kevin Hart's a black man. He's no stranger to discrimination. He just simply was informed and educated about, became enlightened about discrimination in another form, and he has evolved his position. He's a better man today. I am all about the redemption story. You know, I'm interested in how people draw those lines, to decide about redemption. Everybody draws that line in a different place, right? It depends on you and your background, your value system, your philosophy, your level of trust. I totally get that, But I remain convinced that most people love a good second chance story. We don't want to see somebody's life wasted in delusion and misinformation, pseudoscience, bigotry, hatred, etc. So when we see somebody emerge, we root for them. We say, yes. And we actually draw a circle around their lives and say, change is possible. I think about the people who used to be white supremacists, and they were reasoned out of their white supremacy, their bigotry, and maybe now they're out trying to undo the damage. The redemption story. In my own life, I'm thinking of the example of Mel Gibson, the actor-director Mel Gibson. And I'll admit some bias going into this because The Road Warrior, one of my favorite movies ever, The Road Warrior. And throughout the 90s, especially the 80s and 90s, Mel Gibson just seemed like the nicest, coolest guy on the planet. Like everybody loved Mel Gibson. And then the new millennium, right? We start to discover that Mel Gibson is actually a horrible human being. Terrifying recordings of him being verbally abusive to his partner. I can't remember if it was several partners. He just sounds unhinged, like out of his mind with rage. I don't know. He may have been physically abusive. He's an alcoholic, pulled over back in 2006 for driving while intoxicated. As the police officer standing there, Mel Gibson just goes off on a rant about how the Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. Mel Gibson, and I think also his father, a Holocaust denier. I mean, just one hit after the other. So all of this comes to light, and Hollywood and civilized society just cast him off. So Mel Gibson kind of disappears. He's off wandering in the wilderness somewhere. And in my own mind, I'll admit to thinking, wouldn't it be something if Mel Gibson realized the error of his ways? Imagine what it might be like if he came forward and said, I was so wrong. I made so many mistakes. I had so many toxic ideas. I hurt so many people. I am sorry to my core. I will spend the rest of my life being the better man, promoting better ideas and trying to make up for the damage that I did. I think there's a huge swath of people who would have room for that apology, like a legitimate apology, because they want to see the redemption of a life that is right now being wasted in conspiracy and bigotry and hate. Now, I'm not saying that anybody owes him forgiveness, and I'll admit that I'm standing on this sort of biased position of privilege. Mel Gibson never harmed me personally, so if somebody directly in the crosshairs decided, no, it's too little, too late, they have that right. But I just think to myself, what if? What if he had come forward and realized the error of his ways? Instead, after a few years as the Invisible Man, he ends up releasing some independent films. He goes on the press circuit. The reporters and interviewers ask him questions about his past. He has the opportunity to make it right, and what does he do? He's dismissive and nasty, and he rationalizes, and I think in some cases he actually insulted his interviewer. One live television interview, he called the guy an asshole on live TV, And because of that, we as a society, we don't want to make room for that. You're not welcome here. You don't represent our values. You're harming our fellow human beings. Therefore, we're not going to buy your movie tickets. We're not going to support you in any way, and we're going to commit ourselves to standing against the bigotry and hate and abuse and damage that you are responsible for. Cause and effect. But what a waste. And I feel that way about a lot of people. Bigotry and hatred, that just rots you. from the inside out. What a terrible way to live. But if you're going to live that way, I think it's just fine to say that there will be consequences. 423. Hi, thanks for waiting. Who's this?
Hey, Seth, this is Nathan.
Nathan, what's your opinion on this sticky subject?
Well, I got a couple of quick things. One's just kind of an echo of what you've been saying before about giving people a second chance and giving them the room and the time to grow and evolve. You know, let's not forget 2008, Barack Obama ran on an anti-same-sex marriage platform for president. And, of course, he changed that. Of course, we all saw how his presidency panned out. And Hillary Clinton, 2013, it took until 2013 for her to finally support same-sex marriage. And they changed. They evolved. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find someone still upset about Hillary or Obama.
Oh, you'll find people upset about Hillary and Obama. That's a little utopian. But I understand what your point is.
Absolutely. I think we should definitely give people the time and the space to change and evolve. I think that's kind of what you were saying earlier, and I just wanted to kind of touch on that one more time.
Some people are going to say that it was changed for political expediency and not because of true conviction. I'm not going to ascribe intent. I think some people can change their mind, including people in the most powerful offices in the land. So if they change their position and say they did so organically, and I don't sense that they're using that position maliciously against others, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody wins when you improve that position. What was your next point? I'm sorry.
Real quick about this Gina thing. Disney is a private company, and they have a brand. And at the end of the day, it came down to they felt like their employee was affecting their brand negatively, and they fired her. I don't see what's so crazy about that. I mean, if you're working and you're saying racial slurs after work and all that, and it gets back to your employer, I don't think any of us will be too mind blown to hear that person got fired. And, with Gina, she was negatively impacting the Disney brand. If you want the Disney paycheck, you got to play the Disney game.
Well, what you're saying is don't embarrass the franchise.
Yeah, like if you want the Disney paycheck, you got to do the Disney thing. If you want the Ben Shapiro paycheck, then you do the Ben Shapiro thing. You can't have it all. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
But I mean, the argument is, and I can see a flavor of this, is that I don't want to work for a company that's going to tell me what to think and what to say.
Yeah, and then I think that's when it gets into her having an opinion is one thing, but her doubling down and then tripling down and almost kind of picking up a fighting stance. I think that's kind of when you can draw the line like, okay, you're kind of doing this on purpose now.
For me, it comes back to, I used to talk about political correctness, right? Oh, we just live in this nation of political correctness. And then once I realized that actually political correctness is just normally what we call basic human decency.
Yeah, and, it all comes down to Disney being a private company, and you can't be acting like this. You can't be treating people like this. You can't be saying things like this, while you're on our paycheck. Sorry, you got to go.
Well, I appreciate you adding to the conversation about cancel culture. Take care, all right?
Thank you.
Let me take a short break. I'll be back in a second with more of your calls about cancel culture and whether or not it's a thing. Hang on. My patrons get this broadcast totally commercial-free, and they also get it a couple of days early. Thank you for your support at patreon.com/Seth Andrews. This is a sticky little subject today. I'm sure the comment section is going to be Thunderdome as we talk about the cancellation of people for what they do and say and even think. Is cancel culture real? When we go back to the phones, 516. Hi, who's this?
Hey, this is Joe. How's it going, man?
We're talking about cancel culture. Does it exist or not? What do you think?
I think you hit it right on the head when you said it earlier, this idea of it being a non-binary discussion. It can't be that way. It's not as black and white as that. I think the first thing we need to look at, especially when talking about somebody like Gina, we have to put them into a different category. Right? There's the ordinary person, like myself and you, and then there is the celebrity and the politician, who they are like a first citizen status. So does cancel culture exist in that world? Yeah. Does it also exist in the idea of, are you being shown the door? 100%. These are people who have platforms, and they are people who inspire with their words and motivate, and all it takes nowadays is one tweet to either start a riot or to raise a cryptocurrency up, 200%. So these are people that we have to put on a different platform. But I think that we can't look at ordinary people the same way. I don't think we should be going back 10, 15 years. At that point, you're looking for things. I personally see a lot of people who are in their young 20s doing that. And it's like, you were like 11 years old when that happened. You're an adult for like 5 minutes, and you want to police these people who have lived 30, 40 years and has taken them a lot of effort to work on themselves. We're all victims of society in that way. And I think we need to remember that personally.
I think there may be some merit, and you can check me on this. But if I see somebody who's awful today and they have a 10, 15-year track record of being awful, then I think, that can help inform our position today. It's our way of saying they're a known quantity. They have been on this path for a long time, right? They've been doing damage at length. I think we can use the past in context.
Agreed. You got to give people room to grow. Life is a very long journey, and we are subject to what we're taught. So if you're taught one way your entire life, you're taught a misogynistic point of view, or even a racist point of view, or transphobic, or just ignorant, we'll just use the word ignorant for lack of better, then that takes time to work out of. And if you're actively working your way out of ignorance, then I think that should hold more weight than just a single action.
A refreshing level of nuance in your call. And for that, I am deeply grateful.
Thank you,
my friend.
Thank you. Have a good one.
See you later. 574. Hi, who's this?
This is Leslie calling from Chicago. I just wanted to share kind of a different angle to look at this when you were talking earlier about, people going back and finding statements people made 12 years ago that were horrible. And when we silence those people, I guess I'll just give my own story as an example, and I won't mention the title. I'm not trying to advertise myself here. I'm just making a point. But I grew up in a home similar to yours. I was an evangelical minister, ordained and everything, and found my way out of that. And then I wrote a book just sharing my story and like what I learned and the struggle to get out. It's very similar to yours and just what I found on the other side. And so anyway, I get emails pretty regularly from people who were kind of in the beginning of that struggle and how much my story helped them kind of have the same transformation. I think we learned so much from hearing stories, and that's why people like me and you need to share our stories. So kind of just to make that analogy, when we silence people who said something 12 years ago and they have since changed, we really lose an opportunity for them to share, how they changed, what they learned, and what they found on the other side and how they're better and their life is better because of that. And then I feel like, there are people out there that would have changed hearing that story, but then didn't because we just silenced them. So I think it's also, I agree. I don't want to be held accountable to stuff that I thought 20 years ago. I would be completely mortified if people, if there was internet back then to find things that I said and believe. But I think even beyond that, though, we kind of rob ourselves of these stories that could really help progress society along to share what they learned. And I feel like if somebody's kind of ongoing, they just won't, like J.K. Rowling doesn't want to change. That's different. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. I think it's actually good to give those people that said something a long time ago a spotlight and to help us all learn so we can all progress.
What would your approach to like a Gina Carano or J.K. Rowling be right now? Do you say, well, they have the right to do that, but leave them alone kind of thing? Let's disagree with them in the arena of ideas? Or do you think they deserve to have the plug pulled in some ways?
I guess I feel like if someone is saying something, kind of like what you said, we're talking about harming people. If they're spreading ideas, it's one thing to have a difference of opinion that doesn't really affect anybody. But when it's an opinion that truly is harmful to people, I guess I can't support that. I kind of look at it from an evolutionary perspective that this is kind of how humans function when someone is doing something that's harmful to the group. And right now the internet has kind of made the group mostly global, so we have a much bigger group to think about now. But they study hunter-gatherer societies today that if someone is doing things that are bad for the group, they kind of get outcast until they get it together and then can be brought back into the fold, I guess is the way of saying it. So I'm kind of okay. I guess if you're continuing to spread the bad ideas, it's just natural human behavior to not support that, to push that away.
All right.
Good or bad. I don't know. We have a lot of instinctual behaviors that are bad that we should rise above. But anyway.
Leslie, I appreciate it very much. That's good stuff. Take care of yourself, all right?
Thanks.
614. Hi. Who's this?
Hey, Seth. My name's David. How are you?
David, I'm well. Talking about cancel culture. What do you think?
Well, I kind of relate this back to politics, because part of the reason the MAGA hats have gotten as far as they are is because their constituents support what they say. And it used to be that you say the one wrong thing and you are done with politics, like you have been ousted. I mean, you think of the Howard Dean Howell and some of the things that happened where people were really fickle about anything that came out of somebody's mouth. And now you could pretty much blatantly lie and have millions of people follow you. And I think that relates a little bit back to this, what we're talking about here. People are responsible for what they say. Your job has rules just like our society has rules. And, I think if people are not going to accept these consequences, or they find someone who does, if you can't say what you want to say at a job and you get fired, find a job that you could say what you want to say or wear what you want to wear. It's just following rules in the society that, and there is more, I think people are more sensitive to that these days. But I mean, I know that you and I are of the same vintage as far as our age. And I know I've said things that I deeply regret when I was a kid, but I've changed too. So I do give people a second chance. I think people do deserve a second chance. But I think if people are not sorry or don't regret what they say and they are saying something that is in opposition to their employer or their constituents, then they have to face those consequences.
Fair enough, my friend. Good stuff. Thanks for being a part of today's conversation.
My pleasure. I'm a big fan.
Thank you very much. Take care. 843. Hi, thanks for waiting. Who's this?
Hey, Seth. It's HR from Somerville.
Talk to me about cancel culture. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right that it just doesn't fit into a box. I think historically there's been a lot of cancel culture from Christians. If you're not white, you're not right, that sort of thing, and leaving a lot of people out from having basic rights. And I've seen things locally. There was a local bar where the Proud Boys came in after a march in downtown Charleston, and the owners ended up kicking them out. And there were a bunch of people on the right who are no longer supporting that bar, and a bunch of people on the left who came in and made a bunch of purchases from them.
Hey, if they kick the Proud Boys out, I'll meet you there. Like, I'm buying.
I had my wedding reception at that bar. They're awesome people. They do a lot of good in the community, but they kicked the Proud Boys out. So now a lot of people, local Trump supporters, are boycotting this local bar.
Yeah, but if they are going to be awful and promote hate and bigotry, there are consequences. The culture has put in place a cause and effect mechanism where awfulness is not being rewarded and, in fact, in some ways is being rejected, right? I call that consequences. Would you?
Correct. And they're like, in my personal life, like I work somewhere teaching painting classes, and we had a group come in, and the person who was meant to be their artist and work with them was saying all sorts of things, like black people don't tip and all kinds of other things. And I got very upset, told my boss about it. They got fired. That's a consequence. If you're going to be racist at work and say all these things and you lose your job, that's kind of your fault. But as much as I love second chances, there are people who maybe don't deserve second chances who keep getting second chances and things. Like Kellyanne Conway's daughter has every right to live her dreams and do everything she wants. But then American Idol got spots of Kellyanne Conway like dancing around on American Idol, happy for her daughter. And she's doing, Bill Maher and all of these things. So I don't know if it really is real for people who have lots of resources and everything to even get canceled. They're going to find another market, find more people, find more interviews, write a little story in some magazine and never have to apologize.
If you live a life of deceit and bigotry and you're cast off by upright society, unfortunately, the deceivers and the bigots, there's enough of them out there with enough power, money, and influence that they'll be the net that you land in, right? There are no real consequences for so many people. I can't stand the idea that Kayleigh McEnany, I think she landed at Fox News, and you mentioned Kellyanne Conway and all these other just tremendously awful people are out there trying to rehabilitate their image without consequences. I think there needs to be consequences. I would love for them to go and scratch on the door to try to start a next chapter of power, privilege, money, and success and be turned away. That's not a desire to be cruel. It is, I want to live in a world where awfulness is not rewarded.
Absolutely, but like I said, I think on some level there is, forms of cancel culture as people understand it. I think the real cancel culture is people who try to deny others basic human rights for who they are over a belief like Christianity. But like I said, for people who have lots of resources, I don't know that it actually exists for them, the quote-unquote cancel culture.
Oh, I agree.
They don't seem to be hurting or losing as much money, or if they are, they're not losing enough to, lose their standing or not be able to, again, go on and do shows in little magazines or whatever, write their articles and just kind of get forgotten.
Now, they're not victims. They're screaming about how censored and canceled they are as we're hearing every word that comes out of their mouths. It's ironic. Thank you so much for being a part of the discussion today. That's good stuff. You take care of yourself, okay?
You too.
403, hi. Who's this?
This is Russ.
Russ, talk to me. We're talking cancel culture. What do you think?
I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I actually was following this story pretty closely. And there is like a huge pile on this story from both sides. I was looking at the Facebook groups. There's posts after post every day. Some people hate her. Some people love her for what she's doing. And it's becoming really like a big issue. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, the only thing which bugs me here is double standards. Because apparently, when they were blaming her for lack of the personal pronouns in her bio, there is multiple actors in the same studio which also don't have personal pronouns and have absolutely no repercussions for that. When they were descending on her for the latest tweet about comparison to Nazi Germany and stuff like that, well, Pedro Pascal had similar kind of tweets comparing half of population of U.S. who was voting for Donald Trump, comparing them to Nazis, and also invoking some Holocaust things. And he's still employed. I mean, if you have standards, well, then apply them equally.
I think the problem with the pronouns wasn't that she did not include them. I think the problem or the criticism was that she put in mocking ones, phony ones. I forgot what the words were, but it looked like she was making fun of people. So that was a little bit different than just not using them, just to be fair.
There was a couple of iterations of that. And yes, she included those kind of mocking pronouns and then explained those as well. And also, because you mentioned that tweet when she was explaining that, yes, I talked to Pedro Pascal and he explained it to me and I learned my lesson. I understand it now. I'm totally support everyone who uses them. It's just not for me. She kind of showed that she can learn and listen. Isn't that something we're looking for? It seems like it's double standards. They piled on her specifically, and everybody else who might also have some issues had absolutely no repercussions. They praise their goal for we need a strong, independent women and, pushing up through the glass ceiling. But it seems like it's unless if you are not following what we want you to say, then we don't want to deal with you. Kind of double standards, and that makes me sad. And the last thing I wanted to raise is the fine line. Where is the fine line between consequences for your thoughts and sayings and stuff like that and censorship? If you say something and then suddenly your livelihood is on the line, what is this? I was raised in USSR. I was born and raised in USSR. I remember the whole kind of like a feeling in the air every time you speak on public There are things you can say, and there are things you cannot say. And you cannot say them not because they are bad things to say, but because they are not allowed to say. I kind of seeing more and more of that happening. I think cancel culture does exist. That's what they try to apply. Like, you cannot say certain things or else. That makes me sad.
Fair enough, my friend. I appreciate your perspective, and thanks for the call.
Yeah, thank you for all you're doing.
John Pavlovitz, he's a guy that I've quoted quite a bit. He takes a little bit of a different angle than my previous caller. Now, it's ironic that I really like John Pavlovitz because he is a pastor, Christian pastor and blogger, hugely popular online. But the reason I like him is because 98% of the stuff that he talks about, even though it has this sort of Jesus-y window dressing, is humanism. The guy is a straight-up humanist. He's really smart. I think he's really good and kind, and he wants to make a better, less hateful, more inclusive, more beautiful world. Now, I think in order to do that, he has had to distance himself from the Bible. Like, he comes forward and says things like, Christianity, true Christianity, doesn't judge people. Jesus would never have condemned homosexuals, right? And I'm like, have you read your Bible? Do you know what you're talking about? Because God takes a pretty hard line with non-heteros in Scripture, etc. My point is, though, is that he has walked away from fundamentalism and he says really good stuff. And often, I think, has a compelling take on current events. So the fact that he's a pastor isn't the headline. The fact that he's a humanist, I think, is the headline. His article from the 11th of February is titled, "The Cancel Culture is Just Adult Accountability." And he says this in the article. He says, "The cancel culture has presently become the catch-all from the right. Anytime a politician, celebrity, or media member is terminated, penalized, or otherwise adversely affected by something they've said, written, or posted. It illustrates the moral tone deafness they're afflicted with and the lasting symptoms of their recent political alignments. Over the past 5 years, as they fully embraced a so-called straight shooter who tells it like it is and who doesn't bow to political correctness, a good number of Americans have increasingly emulated the man on social media, at their jobs, and in grocery store checkout lines, and expected, much like their hero, to utter any expletive-laden, conspiratorial, discriminatory garbage and never face ill effects from it, and to, in fact, be rewarded for it. Whether they can admit it or not, they're now coming to experience, just as he has, that free speech comes with a heavy cost, the response of others to that speech. The cancel culture is just adult accountability. The truth is, people with power and influence facing tangible consequences for the dangerous filth they generate isn't part of some left-wing conspiracy, but a collective expression of humanity that will no longer tolerate the bullies from using their free and massive platforms to inflict injury on already injured people. Maybe people like Gina Carano need to understand that the position of rare privilege afforded those fortunate enough to be where she is isn't something that can be wielded with recklessness and arrogance, but one that requires a modicum of humility, a desire to learn about others' experiences, and a respect for the disparate community who will see her as someone whose voice carries weight, whether she deserves that or not. The cancel culture isn't, as conservatives might claim, an unreasonable mob mentality of political correctness demanding that she soften her convictions or alter her politics, but the peer pressure of a global community asking her to be a decent human being, to not weaponize her fame to marginalize Jewish or transgender people, to exacerbate a deadly pandemic without expecting consequences, or to intentionally provoke vulnerable communities. Having standards of decency for people, whether they're important characters of beloved franchises, revered members of Congress, American presidents, or for the person in the cubicle next to you, isn't the problem. It's that these standards have become an altar of their own design for cruel and hateful martyrs to die on. that these standards are weaponized once more to make bullies into the victim on their way out. I hope the Gina Caranos of the world are paying attention. I hope her experience becomes more commonplace. I hope we as a society have finally reached the saturation point of our tolerance for human beings who have become so used to unchecked ugliness that they feel consequences will never come. That we have finally grown collectively tired of costly bigotry disguised as free expression. It's not the cancel culture that's doing this. It's our shared humanity showing itself, and that is a beautiful revelation. It isn't an out-of-control woke mob taking down innocent people. It's a reckoning with decency. If it's anything, it's the consequence culture. Welcome to adult accountability, Gina Carano. May you not be the last to experience it. And again, that's the article by John Pavlovitz called The Cancel Culture is Just Adult Accountability. At the end of the day, for me, I think that it's ironic that most of the people freaking out about being canceled are actually being heard because they have not been canceled. I find it ironic that people are acting in untoward and even disgusting ways and acting surprised that they are being held accountable for those words and actions. I think we as a culture do need to resist the piling on and the mobs, especially online. This inclination we have to knee-jerk to the extremes, this does happen. I think intent is important. Sometimes if we look at someone in good faith, we might see that someone made an honest mistake or might be a good person who happens to have one or a few bad ideas, but they don't deserve to be completely cast off by the rest of us. We have to see them in 3 dimensions. And I would like to see some more space and accommodation given to those people who simply screwed up in their lives and have done their best to try to be better and to make it right. We are all human. And I can't imagine there is a person listening in this audience or on this planet who hasn't at some point had a tragic or awful idea that harmed someone in some way. I think we want to encourage the behavior that we want to see in our shared humanity, and that means accepting and even celebrating those who have evolved into better ideas. Now, do I think this thoughtful and nuanced and situational approach is going to be popularized in the era when people just want the gotcha and they're not interested in getting the full story, reading past the headline, perhaps seeing somebody in good faith in 3 dimensions? It's going to be more and more of a challenge. But I genuinely think if we start approaching each other as human beings, that's at the very least the first step. We can hold the terrible people accountable for what they are and what they say and what they do, but we also can make room that some people just make mistakes, other people have a few bad ideas, and that I think almost all people can change. I guess that's just the optimist in me. Thank you so much for listening today. Be safe out there. I'll see you next time.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. For a complete archive of podcasts and videos, products like mugs and t-shirts featuring the Thinking Atheist logo, links to atheist pages and resources, and details on upcoming Free Thought events and conventions, log on to our website, thethinkingatheist.com.